Hey, time for another history brief. So today we're going to talk about the spirit of Indiana. What does that mean? Where does that phrase come from? And kind of what's the story behind it? What is the spirit of Indiana? It's a phrase that exists in IU history throughout different periods and times, and I'm going to kind of focus in on one particular area that has some connections to some military related things, but also some of my favorite quotes that go along with it. So the spirit of Indiana was a phrase that first sort of appears in the early 20th century, and William Lowe Bryan is very often the president of the university, is very often associated with it. And in fact, in 1917, he published a book called The Spirit of Indiana, which was a collection of commencement essays and addresses that he had given over the years as president. And it was published through the IU bookstore, and the proceeds from the book went to a war relief fund for university students that were enlisted soldiers in World War I. And so he publishes this as kind of a collection of where he sees the university being, what he sees the spirit of IU and the purpose and cause of IU as being. So it kind of sets a tone for what's going to happen, but very quickly that kind of morphs into some other things. One of those things that it morphs into is the idea of this anthropomorphic figure, this embodiment, this image of the spirit of Indiana, which this woman who's depicted in this poster is known as the spirit of Indiana. But a depiction in a poster, an artistic rendering, isn't enough. She actually comes to life after this, such as this freshman induction ceremony in the 1920s, where you can see the spirit of Indiana is one of the people that is participating and taking part in the event. And this tradition of the spirit of Indiana being present at campus events continued all the way through the 1940s at least. I haven't found any images or any references in the 50s and 60s. But during World War II, these are pictures from the 1940s. One is a military ceremony, the other is the freshman induction ceremony. You can again see that the spirit of Indiana is this woman in a costume or in a particular type of dress that personifies this idea. So now let's talk about what this idea of the spirit of Indiana is. So William Lowe Bryan grew up in Bloomington, went to IU as a student. That's his senior portrait on the left there. There's a picture of him at a commencement ceremony speaking. And then even after he retired as president in 1937, he continued to hang out and work and do activities and be involved with things at the university for nearly 20 years after that. Including the Golden Book, and he was very involved with it. You can see a picture of him with the Golden Book there on the right. So what was Bryan's concept of the spirit of Indiana? What did he mean by that phrase? Well, let's take some quotes from some of that book to see how he envisioned the university. It is all very fine to say that men are free and equal and have a like right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if vast numbers of the children of the people are left without real opportunity to make the most of themselves, such a saying is a mockery. And this one I really like. I use this a lot of times when we talk about problems and issues that are going on in the world. Bryan says, the world is not saved by a few good people. It is saved by the good in people, in all the people. The cause we stand for is already victorious because it is rooted in the heart of our democracy. What the people need and demand is that their children shall have a chance, as good a chance as any other children in the world, to make the most of themselves, to rise in any and every occupation, including those occupations which require the most thorough training. What the people want is open paths from every corner of the state through the schools to the highest and the best things which men can achieve. To make such paths, to make them open to the poorest and make them lead to the highest is the mission of democracy. I covet such a patriotism for our university, no bragging, no pretense that anything is better than it is, no easygoing tolerance of what should not be tolerated, but also ability to see the greatness before our eyes, even when it is here at home. Owen Wister is angry at American critics who can never see that an American writer is great until foreign critics send back word that they may. I am angry with those who cannot see the greatness of a man at Indiana until he has been called to Harvard. And Bryan continues on, I am for those who see our university as it is, with all its wrinkles and scars, and who therefore also know it at its best. Its resolute integrity, its unworded oath of allegiance to the whole truth, its century of path-making for the children of the wilderness toward the fullness of civilized life, its passion for a clean and just democracy. I'm for those who see through all the surfaces of our university to its heart of gold, and who then stand for it as one stands for his mother. Her garments are plain, her face is beaten with the storms of near 100 years, but she has sons and daughters who exult in such a mother. So I think you can see that the spirit of Indiana wasn't just a woman in a costume that was part of ceremonies. It was part of this larger vision that Bryan had for what the university's role in education, in the community, and in the state was. And I really like that concept. Some of his language is a little dated by today's standards, but the kind of overall philosophy behind it, I think, is really progressive and fascinating for the time period that he was in. So that's your history briefing for today. Hopefully you will subscribe. I'll throw a subscribe button on here so that you can do that. Maybe go back and watch an old video, whatever it is that you want to do, and we will see you next week.